I'm not against spending money, but like, you gotta not send good money after bad, right? At some point, folks, and this is what we hear from the education establishment all the time, we just had more money. And you ask them a practical question, right? There's a great special, I think it was on 60 Minutes or something. They asked, well, how much money is enough? You say we're not adequately funding education. And they were funding it at the rate of about $20,000 in this per kid in the district. And the superintendent said, well, 25, 30, I don't know, 40? It's like, we can't spend enough. Like,
Right.
the answer is always more. It's like, that's not a realistic answer. You tell me what actually is adequate. Right? We hear about like teachers not having school supplies, right? They're like, we have to buy out of our own pocket. This happened at the Frederick Classical Charter School. It's one of my favorite stories. We had a teacher that was hired early, and we asked her to pick out all the materials for what she was teaching. It was math. And she did. She picked, we bought them all, right? And she said, this is what we need. In the middle of the year, we discovered she had done like a crowdfunding site and said, Frederick Classical, we're a charter school, we don't have any money, I need people to donate money for my supplies to teach. And we went to her and said, we bought everything you asked for, do you need more? Well, yeah, I do. You could have asked us, we have $100,000 I think, what do you need? She needed like $200 worth. I'm like, you know,
Yeah.
so I worry a little about this where, you know, we don't have enough supply thing, it may be true, but my practical question I continue to ask to the public school system, okay, if we hear every year the teachers are spending money on supplies, they shouldn't have to. Why are we not increasing that budget? Like, give me the things that you want to buy, total up the money, let's put it in the budget, and let's end this complaint of like, I don't have enough, right? And it happens every year. So I just don't get why that's not happening in the public schools.
I mean, I can say from, you know, a personal experience of having done a budget over so many years for where I work, and there may be something mid-year that you recognize, like,
Right.
oh my gosh,
I need this thing.
I need this
Yeah,
thing, and
yeah.
I didn't put it in the budget.
Yeah.
I didn't ask for it, and now
Right.
I need it, you know? And there is that little bit of that panic that
I
goes on,
agree.
you know, you think, oh shoot, you know, what am
But
I
if it's
gonna do now?
non-consumable-
Because it's a real
Yeah.
necessity.
Yeah, but if it's a
Yeah.
non-consumable, let's buy it once and we use it year after year until
Yeah.
it wears out. And if it's supplies, like we're not estimating the amount of like crayons we need or glue, like we
Right.
need to do better estimate. But I feel like that's a solvable problem.
I do too.
And I heard it literally for decades. Montgomery County was
And I
telling
think
folks,
so much-
please bring in toilet paper. We don't have money for toilet paper. I'm like, this is clearly a
That's
political
ridiculous.
stunt,
Yeah.
right? Like, come on.
Yeah.
They spend what, like $2 billion? It's huge, like billions of dollars in Montgomery County. You don't have enough money for toilet paper?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember when my kids were in grade school, and, you know, every year the teacher would send home, you know, at the beginning of the year, send home a list of what the parents could contribute
Yeah.
to the classroom.
community, yeah.
Tissues and stuff like that. But it was never school related, you know, it was all those peripheral things that you,
Right.
you know, the
Yeah,
teacher,
exactly.
you know,
That's true.
doesn't want to spend,
Yeah.
you know, her money on it.
Oh, yeah, and I don't think we should, yeah.
Yeah.
The other option is,
Exactly.
can we just allocate a budget per teacher, right?
Right.
Everybody
Yeah.
gets, and Pat, our
That's
teachers
a
will
good
get
idea.
like way more, right? Because they use more supplies than anybody, right? But like
Yeah.
your regular classroom teacher, maybe you get $500 a year, right? Like, and you get a credit card that's a, you know, limited use credit card and spend how much you want, right? Like if you're gonna do
That, or you teach the teacher how to budget.
Right, yeah. But I feel like that's definitely a
Budget for their own supplies.
yeah,
you know?
exactly. So we're outsiders. So again, it's the whole attitude like, hey, you know, I'm an educator. I went to education school, and I'm an expert, and you parents don't have a valid opinion. I'll tell you, when we were hiring for the Frederick Charter School, I hired these experts that were, you know, 21 years old, and wrote an essay where they misspelled the word "the" multiple times, and provided a sample lesson where they said anything you say to make a case for something is propaganda. Really? So we can't ever discuss any issue. Everything's propaganda. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So these, you know, I've seen the graduates. I've interviewed them, right? You know, I don't have a lot of faith that they're more expert than the average person on the street. Sorry, and the evidence does not show that. So we, as parents, that don't have a lot of influence on the implementation. And oh yeah.
So, before you go on, how much, again, are we spending per student here in the county?
I think it's about 19,000 right now, right?
Are you,
Yeah.
well,
For this
there's
upcoming-
two questions, like how much we spend,
Operating versus
or
versus
how much do
capital.
we get?
Yeah, so operating budget per kid is around 19,000 this upcoming year, but that doesn't count, and everyone forgets about this. The capital budget is millions, tens of millions, right? So you gotta add that to it. Like in the year where we built Frederick High School, that was $100 million capital expenditure. If you had turned that into a per pupil allocation, it added $2,000 per kid for the whole system, just to build that high school.
So I'm
It's a
actually
huge
going to
expense.
ask that question. What, with the current budget,
Yeah,
what's the allocation per student?
yeah, it's
Because
around
We're
19.
getting ready to do the capital improvement budget.
Like,
so-
It was just 12 a few years, yeah.
Like, that's the number I had in my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
It all of a sudden.
It was about 12 or 13, and
How's
it's
it-
19.
How does
I just did the
one child
calculations for an article, yeah.
cost $5,000 more every year?
Right, inflation does account for that. The overall percentage that I computed, based on like Bureau of Labor statistics and stuff, is about a 14% increase over that. But it's still substantial, right, and it's inflation adjusted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can't say we're not spending enough. We actually spend the second highest in the world, by the way, like as Americans. And then Maryland spends about the 13th highest in the country. Typically, they're around 12 or 13, according to the National Education Association. So my sources, even people who I
Yeah.
disagree with. But yeah, so like, okay, so we're in the second highest in the world, and we're one of the highest in that country. And Maryland is, you know, we're spending even more. We're going to spend billions. So again, money is plentiful. It's ideas that I think are the issue. And implementation. All right, so unions are a problem. I feel people have a right to unionize, but their focus is getting benefits for their members. They're the largest political force nationally. Most people don't know that. They actually sent the largest delegation to the Democratic National Convention is the NEA, almost every year. The only exception is typically California beats them. So they, I would say they're second largest typically. And they fight against improvements like more choices, greater fiscal responsibility, removing ineffective teachers. And then they also have state laws. They influence the state law. They have a paid lobbyist. I've met him. And his whole role, I was talking to him as a parent years ago, and I said, you're like taking away my choices. He's like, I don't care. He's like, I'm paid to be a lobbyist for the union. This is what they want, right? Like, I get it, that's his job, but he was very blunt with me, and I'm like, yeah, I get it, but like the whole system, like you said, it's this virtuous triangle where like, you know, we have no influence. The lobbyist who's like paid to do it doesn't care because it's just, everybody's doing their job, but we're not improving education for kids, right? So anyway, so that's,
They don't, that's not their focus.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's politics,
They
it's
say
other
it's
things.
about the student, but it's not about the
No, it's political power, it's
Money.
political agenda.
All that money.
Yeah, they donate, they influence elections big time. That's why Moms for Liberty has gotten so much pushback, is because they're the first force ever nationally that is about to go toe to toe with the union.
Yeah.
And the union is scared, said they are trying to disparage them as much as they can and call them all these things, which are completely untrue. And it's unfortunate because we've needed a group to counter the union. The reason we don't have school choice in Maryland, it's not that parents don't want it. It's the union won't let the people get elected who want to do that, right? But that is changing. We've got a bunch of states. So NCTM and NCTE, again, these professional organizations, and this is a theme in American politics. We see it with the gender issue as well. Professional organizations, you would think that the NCTM and NCTE would be like these scientific bodies, but they're more like advocacy bodies, right? So they actually said, well, let's place less emphasis on math content. And when I wrote this slide, it was interesting. They reversed course at that time. Now they've reversed again. They just came out with something I saw last month where they're going back to, we're math teachers, let's emphasize math less. So I guess we're going to go back to the purple book that has like no numbers in it or something. But these are like ideological groups, right? This is kind of, unfortunately, what they could be good groups, but unfortunately they're more ideological.